Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today's session, today's webinar, when we're going to be talking about how to successfully crowdfund and access the Sport Northern Ireland Creating Opportunities Match Fund. We're going to be talking about crowdfunding as a whole, as a concept in order to raise money to get your project off the ground and happening. We've also been joined by the wonderful Kyle from Sport Northern Ireland, who's going to talk through that really exciting match funding opportunity. You will have noticed that I've put a few little comments into the chat box. Please do feel free to use that chat box throughout the course of the session. Let us know whereabouts you're kind of tuning in from, maybe a little bit about your organisation or your project idea. And of course, you can ask any questions using that chat box as well. Before we do get started properly, there's just a little bit of housekeeping to go through. We have allowed 1 hour for this session, and that does include a Q&A at the end. So as I've mentioned, please do make sure that you use that chat box, or alternatively, the Q&A box, which you will find as part of your toolbar at the bottom of your screen, to add in any questions that crop up for you throughout the course of today's session, and we will cover off as many of those as we can towards the end. We are actually recording this session, so it is live. However, the whole thing is being recorded, and we will make sure that we circulate that replay with you after the event has ended. We'll send you a follow-up email with all of the links to the resources that we've talked about throughout today as well. So you'll have everything you need at your fingertips to be able to start your crowdfunding journeys. If you do have any issues with your internet connection, the best thing to do is just to exit the live room and then use your registration link to come back into the live session. You might find that you have lost kind of the archive of the chat box. Do feel free to pop a message into there and we can bring you back up to speed. And as I mentioned, there will be that replay, of course, that you can watch back in your own time as well. Now, hopefully you can see the full slide in its entirety, and there's a little video box with myself just kind of sitting away from that. If for some reason you can't see the full slide, then please do go to the view option, which is the top right of your screen. Click on that and you should be able to select side by side speaker view, and you'll be able to see the full slide, and then myself and Kyle kind of sat next to that somewhere. Okay. Let's get started. So one thing that I would love to know, and by all means pop this into the chat box so I can get a real feel of who we have in the room today. How many of you maybe have utilised crowdfunding as a concept before? You might not have used Crowdfunder UK, but you might have raised money digitally. So you might have used one of the other crowdfunding platforms that are out there. It'd be good to get a bit of a gauge to know if you have any kind of baseline knowledge as to what crowdfunding is. For those of you that this is a completely new concept for, just to give you a little bit of an idea, crowdfunding is ultimately going out to your network and your crowd of people around you, in most cases your friends, your family and your community, in order to raise money to get your idea or your project off the ground, and to fund whatever it is that you're trying to raise money for. Now, Crowdfunder UK has been around for about 13 years now, and we are slightly different to the other platforms that are out there, primarily because, one, we have this amazing match funding opportunity that we'll discuss a little bit later, and also we're the UK's leading rewards-based crowdfunding platform. And we'll look in a bit more detail as to what we mean by rewards further on in the session. For now, though, it's the concept of offering a benefit of some kind in return for a financial contribution. So we're not encouraging people to invest in your club or organisation. We're not expecting you to give away equity or anything like that. We're talking about things like maybe the match day ball or sponsorship that you would normally be getting from local businesses, where they actually might put it in a bit of money towards the club. It could be products and services that have been gifted to you as an organisation from the local business community as well. We'll look at different ways in which you can utilise that opportunity when running your crowdfunding campaign too. So in its most simplest form, the way that it works is you would essentially set up a free to use account with Crowdfunder UK, so at crowdfunder.co.uk. You'd create a unique page, and on that page, you're going to tell your story. So, who you are as an organization, what sport or physical activity, of course, that you're practicing and delivering, and how you are engaging with your local community. Keep it really kind of person centric and talk about the wonderful things that you do and the impact that you're having within your community and within your sector. And then you would set a target as well, decide how much you would like to raise from your crowd and then how long you would need to run your project for. You would then go on to offer any rewards. So you would go out to your community and source those rewards and list them onto your crowdfunding page if that's something that you were hoping to add onto there. And you'd also apply for any extra funding that you could have been matched with through our system. So when we talk about extra funding at Crowdfunder, what we're really talking about is match funding. So different organisations such as Sport Northern Ireland who have pots of money that can be distributed through ourselves at Crowdfunder to eligible projects like yourselves. You'd then go on to launch your project. So you'd set your project live on the website and you'd spread the word with your networks. We always recommend that you start with the people that are closest to you and to your organization. So that will be your friends and your family, club members, people who you already interact with in that kind of space, in that sporting sector. And then also you'd be thinking about promoting it to your wider community too. So when we're talking about rewards, for example, we would encourage you to have a really varied offering of rewards that are focused at your kind of club members or people that already use your organization, but then also things that might incentivize the wider community to get behind you and give a little bit of money to your page too. Now, for lots of people, of course, the idea of crowdfunding is all about raising the money that you need to make your idea happen. That's why you're all here to find out how to kind of do that. And I'm sure you've all got a project idea in mind already. A few things that people don't necessarily think about when they're looking to crowdfund is the additional benefits that can come along with actually doing it in this way and raising the money in this way. First of all, it's a really great way to build validation in what you're doing. It can help build confidence in your idea, and it can be a really low risk way to see if there actually is an appetite for what you're hoping to achieve when you raise the money. It's a brilliant way to gather some feedback from your local community as well, and just make sure that what you're hoping to achieve is actually needed and that people are then really looking forward to seeing it happen. It will help build awareness around what you're doing. People will want to then follow the journey of you not only raising the money, but then going on to achieve what it is that you're trying to with that money. So it's a brilliant way to raise awareness around your organization or your club, maybe even the sport itself. We've had some really interesting different sports come through the platform over the years, some of which are quite niche, some are quite small scale. And actually, by running a crowdfunding campaign, they've actually had more of a reason to go out and talk to people about this incredible sport that they practice. And then the local kind of press or radio have got behind it. And actually, they've developed more interactions with the community. People have signed up to give it a try or become members. So it's a great way to actually build an audience around what you're doing. And then everybody that donates to a crowdfunding campaign will automatically become an advocate. They'll start talking to their friends and their family, their networks about this great campaign that they're supporting. So it's a brilliant way to help build not only an audience around what you're doing, but an engaged audience that really are kind of there supporting you and cheering you on from the sidelines. And that can lead to some really lovely, meaningful connections. That could be with local businesses, that could be with individuals who might maybe volunteer their time and that can actually be offering gifts in kind to help you to be able to deliver your project. You'll develop new skills along the way as well. For many people that embark on crowdfunding, it's something that they might not have done before. So actually being able to develop a network, develop an engaging story, talk about yourself and self-promote, maybe using social media in order to do that effectively. There are lots of different skills that we will help and support you to actually learn along the way that can be really useful going forward for your organization and your club as well, that you can integrate into different areas going forward. And then, of course, that extra funding, the all important match funding opportunities that we have available. And we're going to hear more about that in just a moment. We work with both national and regional partners, and we have around £10 million worth of extra funding to distribute to eligible projects. So it's always worth just checking who you've been matched with when you start setting up your project and applying for everybody that you think would be a good fit for your project. You can receive more than one pot of money from different organisations. And so just make sure that you are looking at all of the different eligibility criteria, because you could be eligible for more than just one pot of money from our funding partners. So we know that crowdfunding for sport and for physical activity projects work really, really well. And there's a few key reasons for that. Primarily, it's because you already have a ready-made crowd. You're already, in most cases, kind of grouped together, if you like, for a common purpose, whether that's to do with training, supporting family members of those who come and participate in your sport or your physical activity. You will already have a crowd at your fingertips, and it's all about utilizing that, not only for promoting your campaign and donating to your campaign, but also to help you to plan it and create it. You will potentially have people within your ready-made crowd that you can utilize their skill sets. There could be people who are brilliant at taking pictures, or could be brilliant at writing an engaging story to put onto your page. So it's always a good idea to put a bit of a call to action out when you're thinking about running a crowdfunding campaign, to see if you can develop a bit of a team, a bit of a committee that can help you to do this. It's a really great idea to do it collaboratively if you can. It's going to take the pressure off one person trying to deliver this on their own, and it also means that you're getting feedback in different kind of voices throughout the storytelling as well. You will have a shared passion because you're all there for that common purpose of enjoying that sport or physical activity together, and you'll want to see this thing come to life. Whatever it is you're raising money for is going to benefit that ready-made crowd, so they're going to be passionate and driven about it. That team aspect that I mentioned, that comes naturally to a lot of people that enjoy participating, especially in team sports, who feel part of that connected community. Make sure you're leaning upon that to help you to develop the crowdfunding campaign. Now, as well, you will be known in your community, and that's going to go beyond your kind of sporting sector. You will be known by the local schools, the local colleges, local organisations. No doubt you feature on those kind of Facebook groups as well, where things are happening in the town or the villages where you live. Make sure that when you are talking about your social and your community impact, that you really do highlight all of the great things that you do. For lots of clubs and organizations, the wider community might not actually have any idea that you are responsible for running summer camps in the summer holidays, and actually the children go and they can eat a meal for free. They might not know that wonderful kind of community impact side of what you do. So make sure you're talking about that, and make sure that you are highlighting the fact that for the majority of you, I imagine you work in a kind of profit with purpose or not-for-profit way. It might be that you're a charity or you're set up as a social enterprise. Again, not everybody in the community will realise that. So really strip it back and talk about the kind of history of the organisation as well, and how you are set up, because that helps people to feel as if they have more of a reason and a need to make sure that they can help you to develop whatever it is that you're doing. The other great thing you can do is to set fundraising challenges and activities for your community and your network. So don't be afraid to get everybody involved in some way or another, really getting them behind you to raise that money. It's a great way and an exciting way to get your community involved and engaged in what you're doing, and it can give them a sense of ownership as well, to feel that they're really part of this journey with you, especially if they might not have access to a huge amount of disposable income, but actually somebody, they could do a sponsored run, walk, whatever it might be, to feel like they're contributing in some way. So giving them an opportunity to do that can be a really exciting way to get them involved. We've talked about those rewards. Lean on your network, put that call to action out, see what businesses or individuals might have something they could offer you in kind that you could list onto your page that people could claim through donating a set amount of money. And of course, there might well be celebrities or alumni that are attached to your sport or your physical activity. There's always a way to reach out to people. You know, the worst case, you don't get a response, but in the best case scenario, you might just get a reshare or a retweet or somebody actually putting some money onto your page. And we have seen it happen. So do, you know, reach for the stars, for want of a better phrase, but, you know, don't be afraid to kind of think quite grand scale when it comes to those kinds of things. Like I say, the worst case scenario, you don't get a response, but it's always worth a try. And then that community impact that I've mentioned over and over again, it's really important that you do highlight that on your page and you showcase just a wonderful, you know, organization that you are for the community as a whole. Okay, just a few numbers for you to take a little look at. So in terms of sports focused projects that we've seen coming through the platform over the years, we've seen more than 7,000 projects come through and raise more than £39 million collectively. They've been supported, by almost 450,000 individuals. And we've been able to, in partnership with our sports partners, distribute £11.3 million of extra funding or match funding. And that is just through the sports partners that we work with. So that's not taking into account any of the other national organisations or local authorities, those kinds of things that we also work with too. Okay, and to talk us through a really exciting opportunity from Sport Northern Ireland is Carl Robinson, who's joining us today to talk through the Creating Opportunities Fund. Thank you, Carl, for joining us. How are you doing?
All good, thanks, Zoe. Pleasure to be on. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I can
Brilliant,
hear you loud and clear. I'm going
brilliant.
to duck out for a moment and let you talk your way through the fund. And I know you've got a little bit about eligibility and the types of projects that you're kind of looking for as well. As I'm running the slides, you might need to give me a little nod just to make sure
Yeah,
sure that
the
I'm picking
next
up what I
slide, please. A couple of times, maybe. Yeah, no, listen, that's no issue at all. Thank you so much, Zoe, and thank you for the introduction. As Zoe rightly said, I'm Kyle. I work in the sport development team in Sport Northern Ireland. And just today, I'm going to outline one of the extra funding opportunities that Zoe had mentioned earlier, that Sport NI have, and it's called the Creating Opportunities Programme. So I'm going to outline a little bit of what it is, some of the relevant eligible costs that we have, some updates in terms of the eligibility. I actually already seen a question coming in about capital there, so there'll be a wee bit of relevant stuff in relation to that. And give you maybe a few different key tips and pointers in relation to some of the grants that we've seen come in so far, and then how you can ultimately engage with our Creating Opportunities programme. I'll then pass back to Zoe, who will continue on with the presentation. And as Zoe rightly said, there'll probably be a number of questions. Please feel free to ask them, and we will hopefully get to all of them by the end of the session. We will have a Q&A at the end as well. So Creating Opportunities is a national lottery funded programme. As you can see there, it's available and open to sports clubs, charities, PTAs, and community groups or voluntary groups, all eligible to apply for that. You can apply up to £5,000 of match funding for your project. So say, for instance, your project total cost is £8,000. You can get up to £4,000 of that match funded from us at Sport NI. So it's up to 50% of a total of £5,000. So if your project is any greater than £10,000, we only match up to a maximum of 5k. Financial support has been provided actually for this programme for 3 years, all being well, from the National Lottery. So this is actually the first year of it. We're in phase 1, and it runs on financial year. So all of the projects that are in this year have to be completed, and the spending has to be completed by the end of March, so March 31st, 2025. And all of the applications have to be submitted by the end of January. So the deadline, I believe, on the guidance notes is the 27th of January. So that is the deadline if you're wanting to submit a project for the next couple of months of delivery. So creating opportunities is all about leveling the playing field and increasing participation opportunities for sport and physical activity to take place. So just a wee bit of an outline then on some of the eligible costs. So if you want to flick on there, brilliant, thank you. My first little bit of advice would be, and it sounds really daft and maybe very obvious, but just read the guidance notes in the first instance. It sounds so simple, but it will tell you all of the guidelines that you need to know for this project. I will share the guidance notes after. The guidance notes can also be found on the Creating Opportunities webpage on Sport NI's website. So you'll be able to download those, as well as some really helpful documents in terms of the funding conditions, FAQs, things that have quite often been asked to us. So there's some helpful stuff on there as well. Creating Opportunities, as it says, their participation project. So it's a participation project grant. So we're looking to see any new or additional projects that will improve sport and physical activity levels within your club, community group, charitable organisation, or PTA. And I would like to stress the importance of that. It has to be something that is new or additional, because we're wanting to ultimately create opportunities through this programme for more people to engage in sport and physical activity. And again, as part of that, through levelling the playing field, the term around that is all about trying to engage underrepresented groups in sport and physical activity. So that would be the likes of groups could include people with disabilities, for instance, women and girls, children and young people in some scenarios, over 65s, older people, ethnically diverse communities, LGBTQ plus communities, people living in greatest areas of social need, and then also the likes of people living in rural areas as well. So people that may have been underrepresented in sport and physical activity in the past. Again, as I mentioned before, it has to fit within the eligible timeframes of expenditure. So your project must be completed by the end of the financial year, which is March 31st, 2025. And the deadline for this year's applications is the 27th of January, 2025. So again, the rationale behind this is, as Zoe's already mentioned, you'll run a campaign as part of this project. So the campaign has to last for within the Creating Opportunities program, it has to last between 4 to 6 weeks. So really, if your campaign lasts for 4 weeks, realistically, we're looking at projects that are now going to be delivered from the end of January to the end of March next year, sorry, should I say. And then just a couple of examples of some eligible expenditures that participation projects have already used so far in this financial year. I've highlighted one in bold there in terms of capital costs, because that is something that has been added within to our guidance over the last couple of weeks, probably the last couple of months now. So there are some eligible capital costs that can come into your project. And just if you want to flick on to the next slide there, Zoe, we should hopefully see a few examples of those. So the inclusion of capital costs, we're hoping will add extra value to some of the participation projects that are going to be taking place. I'd like to emphasize, though, that it has to be something that ties in directly to a participation project that's new or additional to what you're delivering. So it can't just be a capital cost that you think you need with no real justification behind any participation project that it's going to help support. What I thought was probably easiest would be for our capital team in Sport NI to highlight maybe some examples and some useful examples from different sports that could potentially apply if they wanted to include capital costs in their expenditure for their projects. So you can see here that the trend is different 12-week programs, participation programs, but some of it being equipment capital, but also some of it being capital works as well. So the two on the left-hand side are more looking at capital equipment, and the two on the right-hand side are looking more at capital works. So hopefully that makes sense. And by all means, if you have any queries in relation to that, please feel free to ask them. We will share these slides, so you'll be able to see these examples anyway going forward. So if you want to move on to the next slide. Sorry, actually, just back on the capital one, I just had one additional note in relation to that. Some elements of capital that we won't fund will be capital elements that require statutory approval, such as planning permission, capital elements that require the appointment of design teams, or capital elements that ultimately fail to level the playing field. So just as we said, in terms of leveling the playing field, that term is about engaging underrepresented groups through your participation project. So hopefully that makes sense. Sorry, you can move on this time, Zoe. I thought it would be useful, based on some of the applications that we've received so far, some of maybe the frequent challenges that are coming up, or frequent issues that may be coming up with applications and campaigns that we're seeing, to add maybe some key tips on how you can make your campaign and your application to us most relevant and most applicable for this match funding opportunity. So again, just want to emphasize, reading the guidance notes and supporting documentation sounds so simple, but it is so valuable. The next one is an interesting one in terms of going live on your project. We would strongly advise that you don't go live on your project until the application process has been completed, and your project has been assessed by us at Sport NI. Because if you require any changes to your campaign or application that you've submitted to us, for instance, you've maybe included an ineligible cost that requires feedback and maybe improvement, which we will provide, your project then will be deemed as ineligible because it's already live and it's already maybe received funding. So we would strongly advise that you don't go live on your project whenever you apply towards us. The community-based rewards, again, I think Zoe will touch on this after me, but one of the things that we quite often see with our community-based rewards that are coming in is that they're actually more focused toward the club. So it's actually more of a benefit to the club rather than the community as a whole. One example that we would always use would be looking to support a local business, so which would be more of a community-based reward. So if you donate £15 to our crowdfunding campaign, you will get 50% off voucher at the local butchers in the village or in the town that your club or sports organisation is part of. So that would be more of a community-based reward because it's actually given back to someone or something in your local community. Club-based rewards are more things like club merchandise or club sponsorship boards, because again, that money is just being directly linked back into the club. Whilst we don't mind you including those, we would encourage that there would be some local community organisations and local businesses potentially benefiting from your crowdfunder campaign, if that makes sense. Then one big thing that, again, we would often ask for feedback on whenever projects come into us would be having real clarity on your project costs. So the simplest way to do this is having a clear budget breakdown and a plan of your expenditure, you know, where you're going to spend it, who it's going to be spent on, what are the specific costs, and when it's going to take place. So having a clear project timeline is really important. And just going down to that second bottom point in terms of the eligible time frame for spend, as I mentioned before, the applications will be closing on the 27th of January, but you can submit your application anytime from today, because we actually score these grants on a weekly basis and hope to try and get it turned around to you within that week or so. So obviously over the Christmas period, that won't be the case. Myself and the rest of the assessment team won't be scoring grants on Christmas Day, but we will be going back at it again in the new year. And it's, as I say, our assessment team meets on a weekly basis, and we hope to provide feedback to people the day after that. So it's really only usually a week or so turnaround on these grants. You have opportunity to improve your grant as well. So your application. So we will send letters of improvement, sometimes, unless there's a number of ineligible costs outlined within your application. But we will also try to make sure that we get as many people through this as possible, because we want to support clubs and community groups and organisations who want to create opportunities in sport and physical activity. Again, just to emphasise, new and or additional projects. So we want to make sure that it's not current club existing programs that are going on. We want these things to be additional and new to what your club is already delivering or what your organisation is already delivering, so that we're increasing the opportunities within sport and physical activity. Ultimately, without this funding, the activity couldn't go ahead. So that's what we want to highlight through this project. And then just the last one, which again is another key pointer, is that for any projects that are between 4K and 5K of match funding, so up to the maximum over 5K, we would request that you have a video within your project. So there's some really useful tips both from Crowdfunder and on our webpage on how you create your video, and just some of the key things that you want to outline. It's really looking to outline what your project is all about and why it is leveling the playing field, why it is creating opportunities in sport and physical activity that weren't there before. So if you would like to go on to the next slide, please. And I think that'll be my last slide. Yep. So just to apply through the Crowdfunder page, just to go on to this extra funding opportunity. First of all, after you've created your campaign, you want to make sure that you're logged in first and foremost. You click on the dashboard, on the project dashboard, click on the extra funding tab on your dashboard, and then scroll down to Sport NI, creating opportunities to apply for our funding. At that point in time, we will get a notification, and either myself or another member of the team will send you an email notifying you that we acknowledge that your application has come into us, and that we'll either be scoring it within this week or next week. So hopefully that information is all helpful. I have no doubt there'll be a few questions coming in, and that is no problem at all. I'll welcome any of those questions coming through. But for now, I'll pass over to Zoe again, if that's okay.
Thank you, Carl. That was really, really useful information, and brilliant to get an idea of the types of things that are going to get funded as well. If anybody has any questions directly for Sport NI about their project or eligibility, we'll make sure that we not only share the contact information with you in our email follow-up, but it will be on the final slide as well. And you can always direct any questions directly to Sport Northern Ireland if needed as well. Thank you so much, Kyle. Kyle's going to stick around for the Q&A at the end as well. So do keep those questions coming into the chat box, and we'll make sure we get through those. Just I'm going to add a little bit of information to this slide as well. When you're setting up your crowdfunding page, so your crowdfunding project, you will be asked some basic information. So a little bit about whereabouts you are, also a little bit of information about your kind of organizational structure. So whether you are a charity or a limited company or a CIC, social enterprise, you will have lots of different options that you can choose from. Make sure that you can complete those areas. And also, there will be a section on extra funding. It's all simple to complete. It's all kind of tick box exercises. Ultimately, you need to tick the box to allow us to share your project information with our partners. And then you'll also be asked things like who's likely to benefit from your project, maybe the kind of age groups or the demographic of the community that you're looking to support. And you'll also be asked about the project aims. And that might be, in the majority of cases, it's going to be things like increasing physical fitness, reducing loneliness and isolation, because we all know how beneficial those types of activities are for people in those situations. So tick as many of those that are relevant to you and you as an organization and your project aims. And then our system, our wonderful computer system, will match you with any of our partners that we think would be a good fit for you. And of course, no doubt the majority of you, I imagine, will be matched with Sport Northern Ireland, the Creating Opportunities Fund, possibly along with some others as well. And as Carl mentioned, you can then apply for those funds through your project dashboard. Generally, I'd allocate kind of a 15-minute process for those applications. They are very straightforward. I would recommend taking a look at the application questions first, and then maybe going off, having a think, collating all of the information, and then making sure that you can just kind of copy and paste that over from maybe a Word document or something that you've worked on together as a team. But actually the process of applying is super quick. So definitely apply for all of the funds that you might be eligible for. In terms of actually receiving that pledge then from Sport Northern Ireland, let's take a little look at, let's pretend we're a project that we've applied for the Sport and I Creating Opportunities Fund. We've been approved for a pledge. So what we're going to do now, we've had our approval kind of email come through. We know how much we're being supported with by Sport Northern Ireland. So now we need to start crowdfunding. We need to start promoting our campaign page to our networks and bringing in those donations to our page. So you'll be able to share the unique project page information, so the URL or the link, if you like, with your networks, and people will be able to make a donation directly onto your page. And those individuals we call supporters. So you'll need to start crowdfunding and you need to aim for this first milestone. So always have that in mind when you're thinking about your promotion and planning how you're going to reach out and who you're going to speak to drum up those donations. Think about the need to raise 25% of your initial target. So whatever your project target is that you've already decided, you need to raise 25% of that from at least 25 individual supporters from your crowd or your community in order to unlock the Sport Northern Ireland pledge. Once you hit that first milestone, you've done those two things, so 25% raised from 25 individuals, you will see a pledge land on your crowdfunding page from Sport Northern Ireland. A lovely banner will appear to say that Sport Northern Ireland is supporting your project, and you will notice that the amount that you've raised towards your target leaps up by that pledge amount. Now, what you need to do is use that as motivation, use that as a kind of hook, if you like, to go back out to your community and continue to promote your crowdfunder to say, Sport Northern Ireland's, the pledge has just landed. We now need to reach our target. So 100% of what we said we were going to raise, we need to reach that in order to secure the Sport Northern Ireland funding pledge, as well as all of the money that you've raised from your crowd as well. So have those two goals in mind. 25% of your target, the pledge lands, and then you need to go on and raise 100%. So you need to raise that shortfall. Now, if you still have a little bit of time left on your live project, you can always decide to add what we call a stretch target, which is an additional goal for you and your supporters to work towards. And that might be a little bit of extra money to cover some of those elements that aren't kind of the necessity to get your project happening, but would be really, really lovely to have just to make it and, a little bit more than the basics. It could be that it's actually to go towards promoting the program of delivery, or it could just be all those nice little wish list things that will just make that project really sing. So have a think about that stretch target as well. Okay, so this comes up a lot. How do you connect with your supporters? How do you promote a crowdfunding campaign? The best way to do it is to think about your community as a network and think about developing something we call a network map. And that could be a spreadsheet, that could be a massive piece of paper in the clubhouse with lots of different post-its attached to it. Ultimately, whatever works for you. In terms of how you achieve this, but what you're trying to do is break up your network or your crowd into bite-sized pieces, little areas and little groups that you can kind of tackle individually to promote to in a really in a nice way that's going to resonate with them. So you're always going to start with groups that are closest to you. So that's going to be friends and family first and foremost. Then you're going to start thinking about, existing members. So that could be club members. It could be people that also use the facilities where you're based. Think about the schools around you and the kind of the academic institutions that you might be able to tap into, maybe do some fundraising on your behalf, different organizations and sports clubs that are local to you, also different businesses. You've also got partners, that might be suppliers, that might be corporate businesses that already sponsor you. And then think about things like community groups, community Facebook pages. There's always networking events going on at this time of year. There's so many different fairs, so much activity going on. Try and be at those. Try and be a voice of the organization or the club at these different events. In-person conversation is really valuable. We saw that disappear for a while back then, a few years ago, but actually it's still really, really valuable to get out there and talk to people. Don't be afraid to put up posters, leaflets, maybe, if that's something that you can do in the local high street shops. But ultimately, you want to think about all of these different pockets of your community and what part of your story is going to resonate with them, what's going to engage with them to get behind you. Your existing members, it might be, we raise this money and what we're hoping to achieve will directly benefit you. That's one message. But for others, it could be by actually achieving what you're trying to, the community impact on a wider scale is going to be bigger, or you might be able to open up your facilities to more organizations coming and using it or hiring it or having, birthday parties there, whatever it might be. Think about that kind of message for each of those different groups and use that as your leading way in for promotion. Use all of the different channels available to you. So, as I said, face to face, print if necessary. That's really good. Still having posters up is great. Obviously, there's social media channels, but don't neglect things like WhatsApp groups, Facebook Messenger, emails, newsletters, picking up the phone and speaking to people. Different people will engage in different ways. So one blanket email to everybody who's ever engaged with the club probably won't yield the best results, but actually a personalized message or picking up the phone to somebody who you normally would speak to on the phone is a better way to get that engagement. Keep it fresh with promotion. So the message of we're crowdfunding, please give us your money, can get quite tiresome quite quickly. So think about the different ways people can support you. They can donate, they could claim a reward, they could offer a reward, they could share your project on your behalf, they could fundraise for you. There are lots of different ways they can support you, not just by giving you their money, which actually makes it an easier conversation to have. Not only that, but when it comes to promoting, think about what you're doing anyway as an organization. Did you have a really exciting match the other day? What's been going on in the clubhouse? What kind of events have been going on? What's happening on a human interest level? That is what you put out there on social media, especially, and then you weave the crowdfunding element into it. So keep a human interest point, keep it engaging, keep it fresh, and that's going to yield the best results too. always with a call to action. So what do you want people to do? You want them to share, you want them to donate, you want them to offer a reward, you want them to fundraise, or maybe there's a specific call to action. We want you to share this page with 10 of your friends and family by the weekend because we need to get X amount of supporters in to unlock the Sport Northern Ireland pledge. Make it really tangible and spoon feed people what it is that you want them to do. That's going to be a lot easier for people on the other side of your promotion. Okay. I've mentioned the other funding partners as well that we have on Crowdfunder, so do take a look at the extra funding page. I will mention that in your toolbar, you should see a resources tab that if you click on that, you should actually be able to see all of the different resources that I've put in there for the session. And the extra funding tab on the website is one of those, along with the Creating Opportunities Fund, but I'll make sure I share those links as well as part of the email. Okay, so we've talked about the importance of telling your story, and we know what works well in terms of kind of the layout of a page as well. Kyle mentioned there about videos, and that's a really, really great way for kind of engaging your audience and your supporters in a really short amount of time. And we know that people are short on time at the moment as well. So having a little video on there can be really, really helpful. It's not a prerequisite. You can crowdfund without it. However, as Kyle mentioned, if you are going to be receiving the kind of the upper limits of the Creating Opportunities funding pledge, then you would need to put a video onto your page. It only really needs to be about 1 to 1.5 minutes long, and it just needs to outline who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, how people can support you to do it, and as Carl mentioned, how is it unlocking or creating those opportunities. Now, people get intimidated about creating a video, and I completely get it. My advice to you would be have fun with it. Use the personality of your club and your organisation. There will be people who feel more comfortable in front of a camera. Use them to be the people who are speaking to camera. Make sure you are showcasing the club or the organisation. So film it on location if you can. And just using a phone is absolutely fine. They don't need to be highly edited. The most kind of heartwarming and engaging videos have clearly been shot on a phone, and they've kind of been cobbled together, but they do exactly what they need to, which is showcase the personality of the club, resonate with supporters and engage them in a way that makes them want to either continue reading the page or maybe just donate there and then. And you can use those videos to promote your campaign too. So try and utilize people within the club who might be big characters or feel comfortable. Maybe if you have a youth team, obviously check for permissions, but kids are normally really enthusiastic to get in front of a camera, start shouting about how great the club is. So utilize who you have at your fingertips. We know what works well, as I mentioned, in terms of that format of a page, so much so that we've set up a template within our website for you. So as you enter into crowdfunder world and you select that you're a sports organization or you're crowdfunding for sports and physical activity, you will automatically have access to a template. So all you need to do is follow the instructions when putting your page together. Use the headers to make sure that you are kind of filling in the information that we would like to see there. If you can, try and change those headers to something that's a little bit more personal to your organization, and make sure you're filling that with images as well. And those images, wherever possible, should feature people, the community, people that are utilizing and using your facilities. It just really helps to create that connection with your supporters. Try and avoid, if possible, just lots of kind of building works or lots of drone footage of the club. They're useful and you can integrate that, but try and showcase people who are using the facilities or participating in the sports too, because that's going to help to just really kind of keep those supporters engaged. We've mentioned rewards a lot, and it is really key, as Kyle touched upon as well. to think about those kind of two different audiences and making sure you've got those community focused and potentially club focused rewards as well. So club focused rewards would be things like merchandise, sponsorship opportunities, maybe signed match day shirts, all those types of things that you can provide as an organization or a club and will most likely be of interest to those that are already part of your world. You know, it might be that it's even kind of memberships or discounted memberships, that type of thing we see added on quite a lot. When it comes to the wider community, you can think really creatively as well. Think about how you might either engage them with your sport, that's another one. But when it comes to the community focused ones, think about local businesses, and that could be discount vouchers, that could be entry to different events that are going on throughout, you know, your community at the moment or in the new year. But you can see on here things that, I mean, they're not particularly glamorous, but some local accountant, which is really lovely, has offered a discounted self-assessment tax return, which if you're self-employed, you will know how frustrating that is to complete at the, you know, the end of year when you've got all of that paperwork to get on top of. So actually for somebody in the community, saving £50 for an accountant to do their tax return for them is a really great incentive for them to actually come along and claim that via your crowdfunding page. And what you'd be doing in that instance as well is you would be shouting about these wonderful local businesses that are supporting you with a reward. And you would also be tagging them into any social media promotion. You'd also be encouraging them to share with their networks and their existing customer base. So it's actually helping you to tap into a new audience, and it's helping them to kind of build their own audience as well, because you're shouting about how great they are to your networks. So it's mutually beneficial, and that's the way to enter into those conversations. You're not just asking them for something, you're asking them to support you, and you are in turn going to be supporting them as a local business, talking about how wonderful they are, maybe give them a set amount of kind of airtime, or, you know, pin them at the top of your social media pages. So, and you could do that on rotation throughout the course of the campaign and say, you know, we're really going to highlight your business and how wonderful we think you are for supporting us. So yeah, mutually beneficial connections is what you're working towards. I've talked about people fundraising on your behalf as well. I just wanted to highlight this Surf Lifesaving Club in Brighton. Actually, they're one of the ones who've recently done this, and I really loved what they did. So obviously, as a Surf Lifesaving Club, they've got incredible swimmers as part of their members, and a few of them took on some swim challenges to help raise money towards their overall target. So you can see some of them got involved. Some of them did, one of them did a 3.8k swim, which is a massive achievement. Somebody else did a 70k swim, which just blows my mind. But all of these people that have set up their little fundraisers are doing it to support the club that they're a part of, and it gives them a really lovely way to do that. The way that it works is you can opt to be a multiplier on Crowdfunder. That's what we call it, multiplying your fundraising. And then people can click a button on your page which says become a fundraiser, and they'll be prompted to set up their own little mini pages which are linked to your main project page. So any money that they raise, any supporter numbers that they bring in, automatically funnel onto your main page. And because they have their little pages, they can promote that to their networks. So it's a really lovely way to encourage people to kind of spread that word again on your behalf, which is great. Now we have loads and loads of help and support out there because we, as Kyle mentioned, you know, we are about distributing this money and getting it to the right places and making sure that you are all able to do the wonderful things that you do within your communities and also embark on creating those opportunities. So we have webinars such as this that run regularly. We also have a great knowledge hub as well, which is full of loads of different guides, loads of resources, even how to create that project video. And every stage of your crowdfunding campaign is covered in that. So do engage with the Knowledge Hub. Once you set up a crowdfunding account with us, you will start receiving email advice, so signposting you to the different resources that we have, and that will be tailored to you as a sports organisation, making sure that you're getting the information that you need. We do have an incredible customer support team, and they're the ones that have developed all of the help center, so all of the FAQs and the troubleshooting guides. So if you do find you have any problems using the site, or you've just got a couple of questions you want to go over, you can always check the help center. And if in doubt, if you don't find the answer there, you can drop the support team an email, and they're really responsive. And we've got that live project dashboard. So your project dashboard, you can manage every aspect of your campaign through there. You can apply for funding, you can do all sorts of things, download reports that you need, who's claimed what reward, and all of those wonderful things that you might need as well. So lots available to you, because we want to make sure we support you as best we can. And speaking of which, we've got a few questions that have come through, and Kyle has joined me. Thank you, Kyle, for jumping back in there.
No issues, no problem.
I'm just thinking we've only got 5 minutes. We might run over a little bit because we started a little bit later than one. So let's give ourselves as much time as we can. We've got a question that's come in. I know you were talking about capital projects, Kyle. I've had a question from David coming in about crowdfunding towards capital project upgrade of facilities. How would
So,
that fall in line with the Creating Opportunities Fund if it was an upgrade?
so I suppose, yeah, it very much depends on what the project specifically is. But if it is a project that links to increasing levels of participation, I suppose an example that I could think of automatically would be the likes of maybe a facility that needs some work done to enable an additional changing room for female participants to take part in the sport in their local venue. That would be a good example of a project that we could potentially support through capital projects as such. Zoe. So yeah, David, I suppose it would depend on the specifics of the project itself. Um, I'm looking at a couple more questions from David there, so I may as well answer David's there in relation to time scale of crowdfunding initiatives for creating opportunities. Specifically, you're looking at around a 4 to 6 week campaign for fundraising. Would be our advice. And then that means then that your project, it varies in terms of project length, but obviously you've rightly pointed out in your other question that the time scale is quite tight in relation to this year's. But as I said before, we will have phase 2 and phase 3, which is excellent. It's a 3-year project, so there will be opportunities to have maybe a longer scale project in phase 2, for instance, if you wanted to do, say, for instance, a summer scheme initiative that had never been delivered before. You could run that over the period of July and August and do your campaign in May and June. Again, just a quick example off the top of my head, but hopefully that makes sense. So, do you want to add anything to those points?
Yeah, absolutely. So from kind of a crowdfunding standpoint, like independent of match funding, what we also find is that crowdfunding works really well in a short time frame, purely because, I mean, there is quite a lot of work that's involved. And also, I talked about that messaging of, we're crowdfunding and we're raising money. What you'll find is people get really excited along with you when you launch a campaign, and those donations will start flooding in. And then you might see that there's a little bit of a dip in engagement in the middle. So it's a bit of a kind of U shape. And then towards the end, people realize you need to hit a deadline and a target, and they kind of re-engage with you. And that's the natural progression of a crowdfunder. What you want to avoid is having a really long dip in the middle. So actually running it over a short-ish time frame allows you to really keep that momentum going throughout the middle, and keep that promotion fresh without kind of feeling, as if it's exhaustive. So we would recommend around a similar time frame as Kyle and kind of Sport Northern Ireland have as well. However, ultimately, if you are not engaging with kind of this particular fund, you can run it for as long as or as short as you feel you need to, but just be mindful of that kind of trend that we do see happen in crowdfunding and what fits with you and your calendar as well. You do need to kind of prioritize this as an exercise, which is why it's great to have a few of you involved. So think about when fits well with when you need the money, your project delivery, and when you can commit to kind of giving it a really good go as well. It would be my advice. We've had a question come in, which I think is a really great one to cover off. This is from Michael. So, does it have to be one main project that they apply for, or could it be 3 mini projects?
Yeah, that's a really good question. What I would advise in the case of 3 mini projects, because it has happened, I suppose, before, is that providing that it's all within the one sort of campaign and you outline those 3 mini projects, then yes, we're more than happy to support that. So 3 mini projects, again, thinking of hypotheticals here, it could be looking at supporting maybe the growth of the women and girls section within your club, setting up a new disability section, and then maybe some small capital works that need to support both of those participation projects to happen. So those could potentially be the 3 mini projects, provided they're all clearly outlined and they're within the eligible time frame of spend. We wouldn't have an issue with something like that. Michael, it is a good question. And I suppose then, just to pass off to Zoe, is there any specific stipulations from Crowdfunder on that?
No, no, not from our side. The only thing that I would advise against really would be running all of those 3 simultaneously, because ultimately you're splitting your audience into 3, 3 different projects. Whereas if there was potential to have 3 mini projects that kind of ran consecutively, so like one after the other, would be a better tactic from a crowdfunding standpoint, because you don't want to dilute your audience too much by kind of sending them in 3 different ways all at the same time. So I don't know how that would fit potentially with Sport and I. It might
Yeah,
be
we
one
need
to
to maybe just
consider.
double check the eligibility in terms of applying twice with, I don't think it would be eligible to apply twice within the 1 year as such, but potentially within other phases.
Mm.
So the new financial year, and I see Philip has asked a question there about offering it next financial year. That is indeed the hope that this will be phase 2. This is phase 1, and the new financial year will be phase 2, and we'll be starting, all being well, from April. So there'll be more of a full year to actually have a stab at. But we are still very much encouraging some projects coming in, if there's projects ready. And probably just while I'm on a roll, here's a way, if you don't mind, Julia had asked a question earlier in relation to the sort of deadlines and stuff like that. No issues in terms of yeah, phase 1 is open for spend of 2024 and 2025, but not for retrospective spend. So it's, as I say, it's only now really you'll be looking at most likely project cost spend between February and March of 2025. So really it's looking at, if you're looking to apply within phase 1, it's really projects that you have nearly ready to go and ready to sort of get started on setting up a campaign ASAP really.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Kyle. I'm conscious of time and everyone's been amazing at sticking with us for the full hour. I'm really hoping that you've got some great information out today and that you're feeling more confident about crowdfunding as a whole and obviously putting in those applications. We've just had a couple come through in terms of, so this is probably a specific one that might be worth directing with an email to Sport NI, but in terms of collaborating with others, does it need to be one club applying for one pot of money, or could they be doing this collaboratively for a project that's being delivered in the community?
So there would be one lead club most likely would need to apply, but there is no reason why you cannot collaborate with other clubs. That would, if anything, I suppose, in the nature of crowdfunding itself and in the nature of any sort of community benefits that you can offer, there's no reason why you couldn't collaborate with a local club. Definitely not. And it would probably strengthen your application in many ways. Um,
Amazing. I just think one last really
yeah.
quick question. Can an existing event that is struggling for finance be supported?
Um, Again, it would be very much what we're looking at really here are new and or additional projects. So if it's an existing event, that would really knock it off. The only thing that I would say is if it was an event that maybe has happened before, but will be happening again and be obtaining new participants or additional participants to what have been delivered before, then there could be justification for eligibility there. But there does need to be a new and or additional element to your creating opportunities application to Sport NI for match funding.
Amazing. Thanks, Kyle. I just thought that was a timely
Yeah,
point to bring up the contact information, because all of those kind of quite kind of niche questions when it comes to specific eligibility and whether your project may well be supported, it's a really good idea to direct an email just to Sport Northern Ireland and the Creating Opportunities team, and no doubt they'll be able to look into that in a little bit more detail for you and give you some advice on that one. And then if you have any questions about crowdfunding in general, do feel free to contact us directly as well, and we can make sure that we signpost you in the right direction also. um all that really remains to say is thank you so much for everyone that has joined us today and given up your lunchtime, no doubt, to come and sit with myself and Kyle for the last hour. I'm really hoping that you've got a lot out of today and you feel more confident to look into the funding opportunities and crowdfunding for your projects. Thank you so much, Kyle, as well, for joining me and giving such wonderful knowledge. And I know you're really passionate about distributing that money to those clubs. So let's get as many of you as we can coming through and applying and getting approved in the new year. Thank you so much, everybody, and good luck.
thank you, folks. All the best.